For most of her life, Zoë Kravitz wore her calm like armor. A style icon born of two legends, she glided through red carpets and photo shoots with the kind of ease that seemed almost untouchable. But underneath that polished calm was a storm that had been building for years. She was the child of fire and air, Lisa Bonet and Lenny Kravitz, raised in contrast, carved by separation, and shaped by the silence that followed. Now, in a moment no one could have predicted, Zoë lowers the mask. What begins as a simple interview unravels into something raw and breathtaking. Her voice trembles, not with fear, but with release. And the name she whispers, over and over again, is her mother's, Lisa Bonet, the woman whose name still conjures magic and rebellion in equal measure. A soul too mystical for Hollywood, too grounded to play its games for long. She was already a phenomenon before Zoë was born, a face etched into pop culture from her days on The Cosby Show, but a spirit always looking for something deeper. And then there was Lenny, young, electric, unpredictable. Their love story wasn't just passionate, it felt destined. When they collided in the late 80s, it was as if the universe paused. Two creative misfits, wild and heady with love, marrying fast and diving into parenthood with open hearts and wide eyes. From the outside, they looked unstoppable. Cool didn't begin to cover it. Lisa with her bohemian beauty and sacred quiet, Lenny with his genre-bending music and explosive energy. And between them, Zoë, a child born into the kind of artistic royalty most could only dream about. But dreams have edges. And soon enough, those edges began to cut. They were young, still forming their own identities. And while Lisa yearned for depth and peace, Lenny was swept up in the chaos of rising fame. Studios, tours, endless temptation. He loved Lisa. He adored Zoë. But he was pulled in every direction except home. That pressure cracked their connection. There were moments when Lisa sat alone in their home, incense curling in the air, waiting for a man already emotionally miles away. He later admitted what many had only speculated. He failed her. He wasn't ready. And in that quiet realization, their love came to an end. No tabloid circus, just silence, distance, and then divorce. For Zoë, that moment marked a divide she could never fully unsee. She learned early that love could be beautiful and temporary, whole and broken. One parent built a world of ritual and reflection. The other, a world in motion, full of rhythm and flashing lights. And so Zoë lived two lives. In one, she walked barefoot through Topanga Canyon, bathed in sunlight and silence. In the other, she stood backstage at concerts, the roar of the crowd vibrating through her chest. But children feel fractures long before they understand them. She was old enough to know her father had left a wound in her mother's heart, but too young to name the ache that came from seeing her family split into two separate worlds. Her mother's protection at first felt like safety, but eventually it started to feel like a cage. Lisa, determined to shield Zoë from the fame that had shaken her own peace, raised her in near seclusion. Their home was a sanctuary, far from the flash of LA, filled with crystals, poetry, homemade meals, and spiritual cleansing. She homeschooled Zoë, read to her from ancient texts, and lit candles each evening. To outsiders, it was idyllic, but to a teenager trying to define herself, it felt like exile. As the years passed, the contrast grew sharper. Zoë craved the outside world, the messy, thrilling unknown. She wanted school dances, best friends, fast food, late-night movies. And the rituals that once felt warm now felt suffocating. Her mother's devotion, though fierce, began to feel like pressure pressing down on a child desperate to breathe. Meanwhile, her father's life sparkled from a distance. Glamorous, free. And somewhere in Zoe's young heart, a dangerous thought took root. Had she chosen wrong? Had her mother clung too tightly? Had her father too once felt trapped? The arguments with Lisa came harder and faster. They were both strong-willed, mirror images of each other, clashing over boundaries and freedom. And then came the breaking point. One night, a storm of words and tears cracked their bond wide open. Lisa pleaded for understanding. Zoë, in pain and anger, uttered the sentence that changed everything. "I want to live with Dad." She was 11. And just like that, the dynamic shifted. Lisa stood in the doorway as her daughter packed. The smile on her lips didn't match the sorrow in her eyes. That quiet moment, Lisa watching Zoë walk away, would live in Zoe's memory forever. A kind of goodbye that neither of them was ready for. At first, life with Lenny was everything Zoë imagined. A whirlwind of color and sound. He welcomed her with open arms and no rules. In Miami, then New York, she tasted freedom for the first time. No more rituals. No more boundaries. Just space. Possibility. A life that looked like the movies. But even dreams have shadows. The glamour that once felt like salvation began to show its cost. Lenny, though loving, was still the same nomadic artist. His life was full of beauty, but also absence. And as Zoë navigated her new world, something unexpected began to stir. The ache for what she'd left behind. In time, she would understand her mother's protection wasn't meant to trap her. It was a kind of fierce, sacred love. The kind that builds walls not to keep you in, but to keep the world out. And maybe, just maybe, those walls were the reason she'd grown strong enough to walk through fire. Because Zoë Kravitz didn't just inherit her parents' fame. She inherited their fragility, their wisdom, their war. And now, as she begins to tell her story on her own terms, she's not just reflecting on where she came from. She's finally stepping into who she really is. Being reunited with her father had once seemed like a fairy tale, but the reality came with its own ache. Lenny was on top of the world, living out his rock star destiny. His music topping charts, his tours spanning continents, and his presence as magnetic as ever. But for Zoë, that presence often came in fleeting moments, tucked between time zones and studio walls. From Paris to Tokyo, London to São Paulo, Lenny was a constant blur of motion, and Zoë was frequently left to find her footing in the whirlwind. She traveled with him, of course, saw the cities, lived the backstage life most teens could only imagine. Luxury hotels, flashing bulbs, whispered compliments from strangers. But when the spotlights dimmed and hotel doors clicked shut, the silence was deafening. At first, she basked in the autonomy. No strict rules, no morning meditations, no incense curling through the hallways like at her mother's. But freedom without boundaries is a tricky illusion. Eventually, she began to crave the very structure she had once pushed away. What started as liberation soon felt like isolation. Lenny loved her. That much was never in question. But his world was too fast, too full. And she was still just a girl, trying to understand herself in the gaps he unintentionally left behind. Her teenage years became a patchwork of experimentation, bold outfits, boundary-pushing nights, searching for identity in a mirror that constantly changed. She once shared that while she had all the freedom in the world, no one taught her how to stay safe in it. That kind of wisdom had to be learned the hard way. She began to miss things she never thought she would. The quiet moments of prayer, the herbal teas, the moonlit talks with her mother. But she buried those thoughts deep. Never voiced them to Lenny, never confessed them to Lisa. Instead, the longing simmered, waiting for the day it would rise to the surface. And when it did, it would spill into something raw and real. But that reckoning didn't come right away. Not until a new energy entered her mother's life and shifted the entire atmosphere. By 2005, Lisa had long since stepped away from the Hollywood noise. She found her peace in quiet corners of the world. Their differences, once charming, slowly began to wear thin. Lisa's deep-rooted need for stillness and Jason's larger-than-life momentum started pulling them in different directions. No one noticed the fracture at first. Least of all Zoe. She was too caught in the comfort of seeing her mother happy. But happiness, like seasons, can shift without warning. And when it changed, it was sudden. In January 2022, the announcement hit. Lisa and Jason were separating. The internet was stunned. Their statement was poetic. Talk of evolution, mutual love, letting go. But the quiet behind those words told a harder truth. They weren't just another celebrity breakup. They had become a symbol, a beacon for soulful, grounded love in a chaotic world. For Zoë, it wasn't symbolic. It was personal. It was watching her mother's heart break again, like déjà vu dressed in a different name. She shared later how Lisa's voice changed. Softer, hesitant. Like a tremble I hadn't heard since I was little, Zoë said. It brought back 1,000 memories she thought she'd buried. Because this wasn't just about loss. It was about revisiting the pain of every goodbye that had come before, and realizing how deeply it still echoed. It had been months since the world watched Zoë Kravitz gracefully step out of the spotlight following her parents' heartbreaking split. But behind that serene silence, something far more turbulent was taking place. People thought she was just avoiding the press. But the truth? She was bracing for impact. Because what was unfolding wasn't just a broken marriage between Lisa Bonet and Jason Momoa. It was history looping in painful, personal ways. And it wasn't just playing out in tabloids. It was replaying in Zoe's mind, day and night. As cameras turned away from Lisa and Jason's quiet separation, the internet's attention laser-focused on Zoe, dredging up past wounds she hadn't even begun to process. She wasn't just Lisa's daughter. She became the symbol of a generational echo. Her own marriage to Carl Guzman had already unraveled, finalized in 2021 after a short-lived union that once seemed poetic, even enchanted. For fans, it had looked like a love story straight out of a dream. An intimate Paris wedding, stunning gowns, A-list guests, all set in her father Lenny Kravitz's historic French estate. But perfection in photos doesn't mean peace in real life. Zoe had tried to rewrite her family legacy. But by the end of 2021, she was back where she started. Alone, heartbroken, and suddenly the target of online scorn. Like mother, like daughter, the comments hissed. Another Kravitz woman who couldn't make love last. And then came the deeper, more insidious claims. Accusations that Lisa's spiritual parenting had left Zoe too unconventional to commit, as if love could be boiled down to formulas or tradition. What people didn't see was how deeply Zoe carried all of it. Not just her own loss, but the shadows of her mother's disappointments too. And just when it seemed like the pressure might crush her, Zoe did something unexpected. She cracked open. Not in a press release or a red carpet statement, but in the quiet corners of a sunlit 2025 interview that no one saw coming. It wasn't prepped or polished. No stylist in the wings, no legal rep standing by. Just Zoe, vulnerable, with no script, finally allowing herself to unravel. The moment her mother's name came up, her entire demeanor shifted. Her posture slumped, her voice faltered, and in a whisper barely above audible, she said, "I left her, and I didn't understand what I was leaving." That revelation, spoken with tear-streaked honesty, stopped the room cold. Zoe described leaving her mother's home at age 11 to live with her father, a decision she once thought was bold, even freeing. But now, with age and heartbreak behind her, she saw the truth. Lisa wasn't trying to control her. She was trying to shield her. And when she spoke about Lisa's heartbreaks, first with Lenny, then with Jason, her words were wrapped in raw empathy. "They loved her, I know they did, but I don't think they saw her," Zoe admitted, her voice cracking. "Not the way I do now." She didn't attack or accuse. She simply told the truth, as she saw it. And then came the moment that sent chills through anyone listening. "People said I'm just like my mom," she said, pausing. "And if that's true, then I think I might be okay." In that interview, Zoë did more than defend her mother. She redefined her legacy. She urged people to stop measuring women by the men who couldn't love them right. She called out the myth of perfection, rejecting the idea that failed relationships mean failed lives. And she opened a door for a new kind of healing, not just between her and Lisa, but for anyone watching who's ever carried guilt they didn't know they had. And as the cameras faded, Zoë also offered a rare glimpse into her life of unimaginable luxury. Reminders that even the most gilded lives can be riddled with pain. From her custom-built Porsche Taycan in matte black, to her collection of Cartier watches and her sleek architectural home tucked in the Hollywood Hills, Zoë lives a life most only dream of. She travels in a Gulfstream G600, splits her time between California and Paris, and holds stakes in eco-conscious fashion brands and high-end fragrance ventures. She's backed major NFT art collaborations and maintains robust insurance on both her image rights and real estate portfolio. The takeaway? Wealth may protect your assets, but it can't shelter your heart. What Zoë teaches us is that smart investments are just one kind of security. Emotional resilience is another. Her journey shows us the financial wisdom of diversifying income streams, protecting high-value properties, and ensuring your brand is as protected as your body. But it also delivers a deeper lesson. You can build a castle, but it still matters who you let inside. Zoë Kravitz may have grown up surrounded by legends and luxury, but it's her emotional honesty that's becoming her greatest legacy. And as the interview closed, one thing was clear. Zoë wasn't just healing. She was leading. For every daughter who misunderstood her mother, for every woman blamed for the love that didn't last, for every person who's ever tried to break a cycle, they saw themselves in her. And that, more than fame, more than fortune, is what makes her unforgettable. Wow, what a ride. From Lisa Bonet's quiet grace to Jason Momoa's emotional unraveling, and Zoë Kravitz's raw, soul-bearing confession, this story wasn't just about celebrity headlines. It was about healing, heartbreak, and finally, seeing the truth through grown-up eyes. We've seen families fracture, reputations burn and rebuild, and most importantly, a daughter rediscover the strength in her mother's love. And let's be honest, Zoe's emotional honesty? That hit different. That wasn't a PR move. That was generational healing. Live on camera. If you felt that too, go ahead, smash that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments because we're dying to know. Did this change how you see the Bonet Kravitz Momoa legacy? Did Zoe's story remind you of your own? And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Trust me, we've got some jaw-dropping exclusives lined up. More untold celebrity truths, financial deep dives, behind-the-scenes bombshells, and emotional moments you won't believe were ever caught on record. And hey, if you made it this far, you're not just a viewer. You're part of the story. You're part of the conversation. And that's exactly what these stories are meant